Well, great. So my name is Mia. I am one of the virtual hosts for the Nomadic Network, and I also host in-person events in Indianapolis. So if you're ever in Indiana, please stop by and say hi. And I'm here today with Carla and Alan, and we'll introduce them in a second, but I know they're eager to share their stories. I am going to share my screen, so give me 1 second. Okay. All right, oops, hold on. 1 second, wrong screen. I want to make sure you all can learn a bit about the Nomadic Network. Okay, let's see. Can you see this? Does it say the Nomadic Network for you? I'll give you a thumbs up. Okay, great. Well, we're happy you all are here today. We are the Nomadic Network. We are a global community of travel lovers, excited to help you travel longer, cheaper, better. And we've got meetups and community members all over the US, all over the globe, which is very exciting. And I'm going to share a little bit about how we started. So let me get over here 1 second. So this is Matt, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. The Nomadic Network was founded by Nomadic Matt, and it began in 2019 with the intention of hosting in-person meetups. And we have meetups in 22 cities around the US, but because of the pandemic, we kind of pivoted to hosting virtual events, which has been great because it's allowed us to bring in speakers and people from all across the globe to learn from. We've since hosted over 250 virtual events, and now we are back to hosting in-person events. We have a brand new website that if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend going to our website, filling out a profile, connecting with people who are excited to travel just like you all. So the link is thenomadicnetwork.com, and that's where you can find our virtual events too. We have 3 different types of events that we host. We do virtual events like this one, and we have in-person meetups. So maybe you see somebody you know here. It's very exciting to go to these meetups because you never know if you can make a lifelong friend from showing up at one of these. And if there isn't a meetup in your city, we are always taking applications for new chapters. We want to see this community grow and people benefit from all the resources that we have. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Instagram. It's the .nomadic network. You can follow us on TikTok, register for our virtual and in-person events, travel with us on group tours, become a chapter leader in your city. And we also have a book club, which I'll get to after this presentation. Just a quick reminder, we love it when you turn your video on. I love to see your faces. I know Carla and Alan will love to see your faces. Please stay muted for the duration of the presentation just to give our full attention to the speakers, but type in the chat, stay active in the chat. If you have a question, just type question beforehand so we can see that. I will save it all, and Carla and Alan will answer them all at the very end of their presentations. Lastly, follow our speakers and support them in all ways possible because they really do this out of their kindness of their hearts. They're not getting paid for this. They're volunteering just to share their stories and wisdom with us. So we are so appreciative for that. Let's have fun and enjoy this time together. So I'm going to ask Carla and Alan, you can start sharing your screen. And while you're doing that, I just want to say I got to meet Carla at TravelCon this year. It was such a blast. Carla and Alan are a child-free Latinx couple who recently quit their tech jobs to travel the world. They hold 3 passports each and have been to 43 countries together. I'm so impressed. 67 in total. Carla was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela, and Alan in Mexico City. And they met at a new employee orientation while working at Microsoft. They wanted to be free of Zoom meetings after transitioning in careers into remote work. They wanted to avoid time zone overlaps and always in conflict with the American expectation of working without a break their entire adult life. They planned for many years to quit their jobs, travel the world, and now they're doing it, and we get to learn how they did it. So without further ado, I will let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Mia. And hi, everyone. Hope you can hear us okay. Nice to see all of you here. We're really excited to share a little bit of our journey with you all. So yeah, we're going to chat about how to quit your job to travel full-time for a specific period of time. And we are linking there kind of our social stuff, our IG, and we also have a Substack, our newsletter, where we share kind of travel stories and recommendations and all of that. So with that, I mean, Mia did a great job at introducing us. So here's all the information that she already shared. But yes, I am Venezuelan and Alan's Mexican. And yeah, we're a child-free couple. We love to travel. We've been doing it for a long time. Before we decided to kind of quit our jobs to travel full-time for a year, we were kind of what digital nomads are known for now. We've been, working remotely for about 6 years, so much before the pandemic, and we were sort of traveling and working out of like a variety of locations around the world. So always traveling has been our biggest passion. And we've been living in the US for a long time, first in Seattle and then now in Park City in Utah. And yeah, and just very recently, so in July, we started this trip to kind of go around the world, and we'll tell you a little bit about like our trip in a second. But yeah, that's a bit about us. So what we're going to talk about today, so we've kind of separated into these 3 big sections. So we're going to talk about the planning aspect. So basically, probably the reason why you're all here today, to hear how we did this, so how we quit our job to travel for a period of time, and then preparing for this long trip. The execution, so we're kind of in the middle of it. So we'll just tell you a little bit, like if you plan to travel full time for a bit, or even for more than just like a simple vacation of a couple of weeks, like the types of services, tools, and tips we use for full-time travel. And I've been using it for a long time, and now heavily, of course, while we are doing this. And then we'll tell you a little bit about our trips. So how we travel, what we like to do, and what we have planned. Just a few things of what this chat is not about. So this is not about how you can kind of quit your job and then like leave kind of like a full-on kind of content creator or like influencer. Like there's plenty of people out there that are doing that and they're successful at that. That's not what we are. And so we've kind of for a long time planned to do this to basically not work at all during the time that we are traveling. But I mean, of course, there's ways to make money while you travel, and that's a super interesting subject, but there's others that are more skilled at that. And, maybe eventually we'll give a talk on that, but not yet. So that's what this chat is about. And we're looking forward to kind of hearing all your questions. We're here for them. So please do send them and we're happy to answer them. So with that, Alan.
Yep. So we're gonna start with the planning, how we did this, and we're gonna split in 3 sections: saving money, committing to doing it, and making sure that you don't stop living while you save enough. And yeah, starting with saving, I think 2 things that were super important for us and that allow us to do what we're doing right now. One was saving money. I know it sounds very easy, but if you don't start early and do it for a long period of time, it's hard to actually save the money to do it. So we've been planning this for almost a decade and saving almost for as long. So the way we did it is we created an account that was only for this trip, and we were saving only for this trip, and it was separate from any other saving that we needed to do. So it doesn't get, mixed with other things or used for other things. So it was something else. And we also have automatic pulls from our bank account. Every time our paychecks were coming in, we were getting like a small percentage out automatically into this account, and then we will pretend it was disappearing into the abyss. So that was super important. And then yeah, the second thing that was super helpful for us is we've been working with a financial advisor for many years, and that has helped us a lot in doing everything we've wanted to do with our lives. And there's a lot of financial advisors out there. I think it's important, at least for us, that our advisor, she's focused on retirement, and also I don't know, there's some advisors that they're trying to sell you some like savings / insurance products that are somewhat sketchy. So try to get away from those kinds of advisors. But if you do some research, you'll find really good advisors and really help us get to where we are.
Yes, I can't stress kind of that point enough. I think for us, I mean, it has been truly kind of revolutionary. And like, I feel sometimes that a lot of this advice and the things that we talk about with friends and families are kind of like just like simple, but they're like very simple, but can be like very revolutionary in your life, like to do like certain steps like this, like, yeah, saving money in like a completely separate account specifically for travel. But that sounds simple, but it's very important. And then, you know, getting help like from a financial advisor. So yes, simple, but very effective, I would say. So the second one is the committing. I think this is as important as the first one. So this is regarding a date and how much money, right, you have to save. So the date, I think this is super important because everything else you do is going to revolve around this, right? So like you have to commit to something, right? Even if it's a year. Like Alan was saying, I mean, 10 years ago, right? Like very early on our journey together, right? I like really wanted to do this. And I told him like, I want to do this before my 35th birthday, you know? And you know, I hope that you will come, but I'm going to do it regardless, right? Because I was like, really, I had this thing in my head where like, I wanted to do something like this. And, you know, it was 10 years before. And, you know, I'm not saying that this has to take 10 years, right, for you to get there. It's different for everybody, right? And it's different depending on what you want to do. But for us, it was like that important, right? And it's important to share it, to make it real, to like talk about it, to like, you know, for it to be something that's like important in your life and you have it present, you know? So I think committing on a day is super key, even if it's just a year, even if it's in a year or 2 years or 5 years. And then of course the money, right? Like how much do you need to travel for the length of time you want to travel, for the type of travel that you want to do. So this is often a little bit like where people get kind of like, what do you mean? How much is enough, right? And it really all depends on the type of traveling that you want to do, right? Do you want to travel for 3 months and go to Australia and New Zealand? Do you want to travel for 6, but go to Latin America and Southeast Asia? Do you want to travel for 2 years? You know, but just stay put in like, you know, a specific small area like the Balkans or, you know, so there's like a lot to it, but the most important things, right, are basically like where you are going to be, right? The part of the world, because it's just the reality, right? That there's more inexpensive areas than others. The type of accommodations that you like to stay, how you like to move around, how often are you going to move around, right? Like how often are you going to take a plane versus just staying put in a region and going by bus or by train or by ferry? And what type of stuff do you like to do? So it needs to be your formula, basically, right? It cannot, there's not a magic number. It needs to be like, what is it that you want to do and how you enjoy to travel? So we know many people that have done this type of travels in their lives, like, or sabbaticals, right? Or whatever way you want to call them. And we know people that have traveled for a year and a half on a 30K budget, you know, very kind of like tight, right? On a, like staying in hostels and like, you know, like moving around a lot with buses and like not moving around in the same area or like outside of the area a lot and all of that. And then we know people that traveled for 6 months on a 60K, right? And that was like all out, like they did everything they wanted to and like didn't really kind of hold back. So we think that kind of on average on what we've seen and like what we have experienced so far, that like at least aiming for like 50K if you want to travel for a year is a good start as average. Again, you can do it much lower, you can do it much higher. It all depends. Okay, and then
What?
if it's me,
I think-
we're good.
Yeah, I think this one.
Okay, all right, and then those of living your life. So this is like a really important one, because planning for something that's kind of long term, right? That it's not like in a month or in 2 months, right? It's like a far away goal can sometimes I think be detrimental, right, for your day-to-day life, depending on how you plan for it. And what we're saying is that don't do anything we just talked about in a way that's going to be very detrimental to your current day-to-day life, because you don't want to be miserable for whatever many years, right? You're planning this or like are thinking about this just because you are aiming for this, right? You have to live your life today, and you have to find a balance, right, of saving and thinking and planning for this, but then also living your life in a way that makes you happy. So this doesn't mean that you shouldn't say no to things or restrain yourself in certain ways, right? If it's going to allow you to get to your goal faster, but you should do it in a sustainable way. So yeah, throughout the many years, right, that we were planning for this, we kind of fully lived our life, right? We changed jobs, we built a house, we traveled extensively, so we moved cities. And even if that made like it took us longer to get there, or even if it like it's worth it for us. And we think it would be for you too.
Okay, some other things to note for the planning. Also, as Carla mentioned, we were working remotely, being somewhat of a digital nomads, and I think that's a good thing to do first if you're not sure if like long-term traveling is for you, because that way you still can make money, still have a job, and experience what it is to live in a different country and not being at home for extended periods of time, and see if you're liking it. It also can help you save more money because you can go, if you can find a job that's remote, maybe you can go and work from a place that's cheaper and save more money for the long-term travel. Another thing that is helping us a lot and that we do recommend is that if you have a home or a car, like truly consider renting them while you travel. We rent them both, and we use management companies mostly to not worry about it. They take big percentage of the rentals, but that means that we don't have to worry about it at all. And yeah, they use Airbnb for the house, Turo for the car, and you can also do this even before you start traveling, just to get a sense of what good management companies look like, how do they work, how much you can rent these things for, and can they pay for the mortgage, for the auto loan. So yeah, all these things that we're renting, none of those are ours. Those are the banks, but because they're both rented, the auto loan is being paid and the mortgage is being paid, and then we get to be traveling at the same time. And then yeah, consider where you have friends and try to plan your trip to go visit them. Obviously, one, because it is cheaper to stay with friends at hotels, but second, because experiencing a place with a local is truly very different than not. So we've made an extra effort to try to plan our trip to go to places where we know our local friends will be there at certain points, so we can actually travel with them and see them. So that's been,
yeah, we just did it for like a month in Turkey, and it was I mean, a completely different experience that we would have had if we had been in Turkey without Turkish friends, in particular on like areas of Turkey where like no one speaks English. So that was really nice.
yeah. And yeah, so here's also a list of services that we use. This is more on the logistical side, and they just help us do what we're doing much easy. So first one has to do with mail. So US, for some reason, is obsessed with physical mail, and you cannot leave the country because then you don't get your physical mail. So we're using this company. It's called iPostal One, which is pretty convenient. You just go to USPS and do a permanent forward to an iPostal address, and they'll receive your mail. They'll scan it. They can even like forward it anywhere in the world. Just caution, when you choose a location on their site, don't use the Staples locations because they don't do international shipment or check deposits, and those are two of the most important things if you're not going to be in the country. But apart from that, you can see which locations do them all, and yeah, it's very, very convenient. Insurance, yeah, US doesn't have a healthcare system for everybody, so insurance is a problem. So we right now have a Safety Wing, which is traveler's insurance, and it covers most things. It has some yearly limits. It doesn't cover cancer, for example, and also if you want to go back to the US, they only will cover you for 15 days every 3 months. So that's some restrictions, but that's what we're doing. For mobile and phone, we started doing only Google Fi, but they cut us out after a couple months. Apparently.
Well, I think this is happening across the board. It's not particular to us. So if you have Google Fi and are planning to leave the country for more than 3 months, just know that
they'll cut your data.
Yeah, this is very recent.
They'll let you keep your number and do calls and SMS, but they will stop the data. And so what we did is we switched it to a flexible plan where they don't charge us for the data, just for the number. And then for data, I've been using FlexiRoam together with Google Fi, and there's some links there. We'll share the slides later. But yeah, that's the most convenient one. Carla is
I've been using local
SIMs because she uses a lot of data on Instagram and it's much cheaper.
Yeah, it's so cheap though. Data around the world is very, like not like in the States. So it's much better just to get to a country and buy a SIM card.
And yeah, money wise, the two things that we use the most is we have a Wise account, which is very convenient because it lets you hold money on any currency in the world, and you can just retrieve it on any ATM if you have their debit card. And also it gives you local account numbers for a bunch of countries. So it's been very useful, like in many parts of our trip where we meet somebody from somewhere and we can do like local transfers using our local bank accounts and even pay sometimes for some business services and things like that. So it's been very convenient. And then for credit cards, we use the Chase Sapphire Reserve. It's a little bit expensive, the yearly fee, but they give you back like $300 if you spend it on travel. And then their points for traveling are amazing. Like you get like 5x points for flights, 10x points for.
We haven't bought a single plane ticket on this trip.
Yeah, we're getting all of our plane tickets with this. And yeah, we also use they let you use like all the VIP rooms on the airport. So that's pretty convenient when you're in airports too often. And VIP rooms outside of the US usually have food, so you can also eat there.
Right. So you don't spend money on very expensive like
airport food
and alcohol.
But yeah, so when you get the slides at the end, there's links there, and all those links will give you discounts if you sign up to any of those.
And maybe just to mention that now, Mia will post that in the comments. Maybe you already did. Thanks, Mia. But just so you guys can sign up there, and we'll send the slides to you guys.
Okay.
All right, and then a bit about tools. So this is just like while we are traveling full time, like what are we using? How do we decide what to do, where to eat, where to stay, and what is like our style of traveling? Again, there's many different ones, but this is our own and what we do. But yes, we stay in either hotels or Airbnbs, depending on the location and what's available and most affordable. Like different places have different kind of availability, of course. And actually, we're in Tbilisi. I don't know if we said that. We're in Georgia, the country, and it's so nice here. Highly recommend coming. And for how to find them, we use Chase Travel, Expedia, or Booking.com. Again, depends on the area. That's what made me think of the fact that we're in Georgia. Like, for instance, a lot of like guest house that we had to book for a multi-day hike that we just did in the country weren't available anywhere except in Booking.com. So you have to kind of like look around. Food. So this is a central piece of why we love to travel. We eat everything and we love it and we do it all. And we eat from street food to fancy places in affordable locations. How we find where to eat. This is lots of cross-reference between a lot of Google reviews, Lonely Planet, Yelp, TripAdvisor, and recommendations from locals and other travelers. Again, different places, they use kind of different tools more than others, right? So you kind of have to check what actually has reviews. For what to do. So the Lonely Planet books are usually, travel books are always a great place to start to know kind of like what not to miss or like what to make sure that like you're paying attention to that exists. But we also do a lot of internet research. We have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. And so use the travel books that are there or whatever we can find there. And for tours, we love doing tours with local people and in a variety of different things. They are generally the moments of trips that I feel I learn the most and get the most out of, like, and connect with kind of locals, which, it's sometimes hard to do. So yes, we use Airbnb experiences, free walking tours, and local recommendations. And then from transportation, like I said, we really haven't bought any tickets in planes. And actually, we haven't actually taken that many flights. We've spent kind of quite a bit of time in each region. And so like in Greece, we moved around in ferries. In Turkey, we sold by cars. And then, yeah, the same in Georgia. But the ones that we have bought with the Sapphire points. And then in country, it really depends on where we are, but we generally like to rent a car, at least for a day or two, because that gives us a lot of freedom to like take a look around wherever you're at. And then of course, use public transit and Uber or the local Uber. There's many of them all around the world. And then other services like GoTrip, which is something that we're using now in Georgia, which is basically like you rent a car with a driver and they can like take you around. It's like a thing here. And we use Google Maps for everything. Like we track everything. I make lists for everything. I have a best of every single place I've been to, all of the restaurants that people tell me to go to anywhere I am. I save them on Google, and it's super useful.
And then after saving them on Google, we also share them on the recommendations on the.
Yes, yeah. So I make lists and then I share those lists about basically like best of Athens or best of Tbilisi, right? Like where you should go, where you should eat, what you should do. So yeah, those are the tools we're using. And if you have any other recommendations, I'd love to hear them. Okay, and then some tips. And after this, I think one more, and then we're going to questions. So I think we're good on time. But yes, planning, this is kind of tips for long-term travel or like, more than a few weeks travel. Planning about a month ahead. And by planning, we mean like how you're going to get to that country or that place and then where you're going to stay is more than sufficient almost always. Like people always ask us like, how long ago did you plan for X or Y? And like not long ago, right? So we haven't yet planned like our Peru like time, and it's coming up in
month.
Yeah, a month. Alan really wants us to get on that. So we'll try to do that soon, but basically not super necessary. We would recommend to not pack destinations, right? You have to leave time to wander, relax, potentially change your plans. Let go, and I guess this is recommendation for travel in general, but let go of the expectation to see everything you want, and that's okay. And that actually makes trips more rewarding.
And one note, Carla hasn't. He never.
Okay, so I am working on this, okay, but I'm getting better. Make sure to have slow days. So traveling full time is not the same as being on vacation, and this is really obvious when you actually are full time and then go on like travel with friends that are on vacation, because like it kind of changes like the way that you're traveling. So you'll get burned out if you don't slow down when you're traveling longer than a few weeks. Keep doing the things you love and wear a routine back home. So exercising is really important to me. So I do it wherever I am. A mat I carry around the world. Listening to podcasts, watching your favorite shows, reading, cooking, whatever makes you happy, whatever is your routine, you can still do it while you full-time travel. And then this is a really simple and small one, but it's important. Rent places with a washing machine at least once every 2 weeks. So yes, you can take it somewhere to be washed. Of course, you can give it to your hotel if you're staying in a hotel. There's plenty of ways, but it's kind of like this little homey routine that I think just is meaningful. Like, okay, we have to wash some clothes, And so like, I don't know, that's something that we do and it's important.
Okay, so a little bit about our trip so far. So we started in the summer. We started in West Europe and did like very short trips in Spain, Germany, Sweden, and France, mostly because we had friends from those places being there during the summer and we wanted to catch up with all of them at their home countries. We then went to Greece, where we were planning to stay 2 weeks and ended up staying 2 months.
Because there's that much to see.
And we could have stayed a year there. Probably we wanted to see it all, but we had to move on. 1 month in Turkey. Right now we're spending 1 month in Georgia and Armenia. We're heading to Armenia tomorrow morning, and then we'll come back to Georgia in a week. And then we're following the sun, and it's getting very cold here, so we're gonna fly to Ecuador for a wedding of our friends, and then we'll stay in Latin America until it gets warmer on this side again. So right now we have planned at least to get there, Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil. And that gets us all the way through mid-January. And after that, we don't know. We're still planning for what will come next. And yeah, what we've been doing in all these places, mostly food tours, hikes, single day or multi-day hikes. We really like lately doing like tours about politics or history. They're pretty interesting cooking classes, farm tours, museums, meet with friends, wine tastings, ancient sites, and food, and more food.
Yeah, I love food. But yeah, that's a little bit about our trip. And actually one thing that I just remember now, because some people have asked me about that, but we can do like a full presentation on that, like packing. That's a big question for a lot of people. Like, what do you pack for like a year on the road? And yes, I have a lot. I think, anyways, if you have questions about that, let me know and I can talk a little bit about that. But yes, this is what we had to share. Please connect with us wherever you would like. The link, here it is for getting a copy of this presentation, and send me, I mean, you can send us always DMs through Instagram. We're always happy to answer any questions or give advice, or and we're happy to answer now any questions. Thank you for being here.
That was so great. Oh my goodness. You guys provided so many useful tips. We have a lot of questions to get to, but first I just want to thank you all for sharing some valuable expertise with your time on the road. So first question, let's see. Okay, a couple of people asked about the $50,000 a year. Is that for one person or for both of you as a couple?
No, I think it's for both. So, I mean, I think like it's an average again, though. Like I really do want to stress that, right? Like, it's not necessarily like that's it, right? You should do the formula, right? Like, you should think through this. Like, you should spend, a few hours, right? Thinking through what is it that you want to do? Where do you want to go? And then you can easily do research in terms of like, let me see how much an Airbnb costs in X location that I'm thinking about, right? And that gives you an idea of like that area, right? And then you can play around with that number and say, okay, if I want to stay here for 30 days, or if I want to stay for 15 days, like you should do a little bit of math. But yes, we think 50K for both of us, you could do that.
And it also depends on the country, right? Like we're staying in private rooms or private Airbnbs in most places, but the prices can go, like in some countries we can pay $20-$30 a night. Some other countries it can go up to
like 100,
70 or 80.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have done that.
Sure. But I mean, it's like there's a range, like, and of course, if you're willing to and fine with staying in hostels, like, and sharing a room, like you can pay 5, 10, 15, right? Depending on the destination. And so,
and a lot of our costs are like, because we paid the room together, we always share every dish because we always want to try everything on the menu. So we always share the dinner and we always share everything. I think the things that usually get more expensive because there's two of us is when there's like organized tours where they charge per person.
Right.
And sometimes it's not, sometimes when you're two, they don't reduce it, you still have to pay two,
right.
and that's where it starts getting more.
Well, and you have to pick, right? Like, you're like, while you're on the road, like, I mean, I think it's also fine, right? To be like, okay, this is the number, and you just commit to a number that you think it's possible and that you think you can do in a certain amount of time. And then you do that. And then while you're on the road, you have to be flexible, right? And you have to know that, like, maybe you're going to have to make some changes, or maybe you'll stay longer somewhere, or maybe, like, yes. And you'll know, right? Like, you'll know the first month how much you spend that first month, and then you can adjust, right? Depending on that.
But Southeast Asia, for sure, you could.
Yeah, I mean, it's
have a really good.
It's like the most affordable area, for sure. Yeah, and there's so much to see, and it's so easy to get around. And so, yes, I think there's a lot. But when we said 50K, we meant like for both of us, for like a couple.
We're all impressed with your planning, because it does take a lot of planning to kind of budget out. And you're right, you don't really know what opportunities may arise while you're abroad. Well,
and I think it's important that, like, yes, you do have to plan, but then at some point you just kind of have to let go of it, right? And so, like, I you have to do a little bit of the thinking and a little bit of the research, but don't go through like a rabbit hole and spend like 3 months like nailing down like how much exactly do you think you're gonna spend. Just be flexible in that. Like, if we have to cut our trip short because we ran out of money, like, we'll do that, but we're gonna know it, right? Like, it's not going to happen like from one day to the next, right? We are like on this journey, and we're making decisions every single day that affect that budget. And those decisions, sometimes it's saying we don't care, like, we would rather cut it short and have this trip the way we want it, or sometimes it's okay, we shouldn't do that because it's too much.
Yeah, so knowing where to compromise. Did you want to say something, Alan?
No, I was going to say that was something we had in mind from the beginning, that we really wanted to last a year. whatever we say, but we know that it might not, and we're okay with it, right? We're just trying to make the best out of it, and whenever we need to go back and find jobs, we'll do that.
Yeah.
So kind of going along with that, Rory had a question. Besides your savings, do you have extra or passive income? I know you mentioned Airbnb, renting out your home and things like that.
We might get some
So we
in
hope
the
we will,
in the
but-
high season. So right now we're renting our home and our car and all of that, but it's mostly just paying for
Like
the
what they
mortgages, the monthly cost, all of that. There's gonna be a high season in December for those, and we think maybe that will give us some extra to also maybe extend our trip a little bit longer. But
there is no passive income coming in like
month to month,
right? But there is stuff at home that could potentially turn into that, right? And so like we're kind of like hoping that maybe that will let us travel for more than a year, right? But we're not necessarily counting on it. And yeah, I mean, you could do like other things, right, to make money while you travel. You could do like freelance writing or like I mean, again, there's many ways, but then it's work.
Yeah, but we don't count on this because like things happen, like refrigerator died the other day, and for some reason now they're like very, very expensive in the US, and we have to buy a new one. And
so things happen.
People are renting it, so we need to get it there like in 2 days, and so yeah, it's more about not having to worry about that than about like passive income.
Exactly. Yeah, I traveled a bit remotely, and it is different. You have to be ready to work a lot, so it kind of changes the trip.
Time zones and all of that.
So Jen asked, do you plan on doing this type of traveling or living through your late 40s and 50s? She said, I'm in my late 40s with some long-term travel experience.
We love to.
We really want to. So like, we don't want to kind of go back to the grind for long. So
and that's something we talked about the financial advisor, like she helped us with this trip, but she's also helping us with our life plans in general. And like something we're planning with her is how we can not retire early, because we might never get to retire early, but like half retire early. So maybe in a few years, just need like half of what we were making before the trip, and do that for a few more years, but like with a lot more flexibility, because we only need half of the income instead of what we had before. And then maybe also plan another sabbatical like this one, like I don't know, in another 10 years. I don't know, like we're planning all these things, but yeah, we want to do this as
I mean, like
can.
this is like traveling is our passion, right? Like how will we travel? Like will we have like the same pace of travel that we have now, and like, you know, kind of like on this like quest of like seeing everywhere we've been, and like probably not, right? Like maybe eventually again like one more time like this, but like living like 3 months out of 3 months, like, you know, in different locations. I'd love to do that for like a long time, right? Like so like that's kind of like what we're passionate about. And, you know, we don't have children, which I think changes the dynamic a lot and changes kind of like what you're prioritize. And so this is what we'll do.
That's great. I love hearing that. I think travel is all of our passions. So yeah. Lorenzo asked, to the best of your knowledge, can you rent your car here in Europe too? I'm going to take unpaid leave for at least a year in the future, but I don't know what to do with my car while I'm away from Belgium, which is the country that they're currently based in.
Yeah, I know Turo operates in most countries, so you can check out Turo. What might be different, I don't know how easy it will be to find a management company that does it for you. That was easier in the US. They still do it through Turo, but then you don't have to worry about it. They'll do everything. They'll receive the car and give it away and take it for service and do everything for you and take a cut. I don't know if that will be available there.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think that it's I mean, you have to do some research locally to see like if there's people that are like offering that sort of management service of the car. But I would imagine.
Yeah, and the way we found our management company was through Turo. So if you go to Turo and to your local city, you can see if you find somebody who has like 50 cars or 60 cars, probably they're doing something like that, and just contact them and see if they want to take yours and take a cut and keep doing it with yours. So.
It's great advice. I had never heard of that website before, so I appreciate your tip. Rebecca asked, have you used eSIMs for data? Do you have any providers you'd recommend? I know I don't really get local sims like I think you had mentioned, Carla, that you do.
Yeah, eSIMs. So FlexiRoam, the one
That's
it's on the slide. It's you can download it, so it doesn't. You don't have to even receive anything physically. As long as you give them, as soon as you give them your credit card, you can download the eSIM and you have the data. It's kind of tricky because their data, if you just buy it like out of their website, is very expensive, but every month they keep having these like 70% off, and so you always have to be on the look for these like kind of things. But they'll send you emails every time they have these things.
Google Fi is also an easy.
Yeah, but Google Fi they will cut the data after 3 months. But yeah,
traveling. I think it's the best option
for short-term traveling. Google Fi, you think?
But I think it's only if you're US based.
Yeah, for sure. If you're US based and are traveling for this less than 3 months at a time, Google Fi I think is the best option. That's what we use for like many years, because we weren't traveling for more than 3 months at a time. And so if you get back to the States, then like that kind of like just continues, and then the moment you land, you're connected to the local network. But it's not cheap either. But I guess data in general is just not cheap in the States.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one to kind of work out. But you're right, like doing your own research too and kind of figuring that out pays off in the end when you can find a place that works well for you. Let's see. Rob asked, if you're traveling for a long time and don't have a constant home address, how do you declare residency for tax purposes, or maybe you had mentioned a site for mailing, but things like car insurance or registration.
Yeah, we are declaring residence on the last place we were resident, which was Utah. Probably not the best one because we have to pay state taxes, but that's where we were. That's where we're registered to vote. That's where we had our driver licenses. The location that we got for iPostal, it's in Utah. So we just changed everything for that mailing address, like our bank accounts or tax returns. Everything is going to that like iPostal address, still in Utah. So we're just declaring it there.
It does make it a bit easier having that one place where this is where everything's getting sent to. So Edward said, I'm planning an 8-week trip to Central America. I'm from the US. Travel vaccines are pretty expensive here. Do you recommend getting these travel vaccines in the city I land in, which is Guatemala City?
What kind of vaccine? Sorry, I didn't get that word.
Just regular travel vaccines. So I'm assuming it's the type where you kind of Google which vaccine you should be getting to enter this country.
I don't know about Central America. I can tell you about Mexico. It might be similar. So you probably can get most of them, and they're not expensive to get. Some of them you might not be able to get, but even in the US, like I remember once we were going to Africa and they were recommending getting the rabies one, and we couldn't even find it in the US. So there might be some particular ones that are harder to get in some places than others, but in general, I would expect Guatemala City, if you go to to one of the private hospitals or clinics, to have all the vaccines and to not be very expensive to get them there.
Right. And I mentioned in the chat too, sometimes there are travel clinics. So clinics specifically built for people who will be traveling. And normally they have most vaccines, but it's going to be more expensive than getting it in the country that you're landing in. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I just thought, sorry, in Mexico at least, and I'm guessing Guatemala must have the same, but for all the American expats, immigrants that live there, the embassy has a list of doctors, like private practice doctors that speak English and that have treated people from the embassy, and you can just call them and do an appointment and ask them, and it's usually not very hard.
Yeah, that's a great resource. That's really good advice. Debbie asked, how does Google Map tracking work? That's it, Debbie. If you have more to expand,
you just said we use Google Maps to track I mean, it sounds like it's tracking everywhere you're going. I just don't understand how that works. So just
Got
ask
it. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically just using it to like kind of like you can save places on Google Maps. And so like if you go to Google Maps and search for like a restaurant or a place that you want to go, like a museum, there's like a little like save button on the
Okay.
and then
So
and
like
then you save-
favoriting. Okay.
Right. Yeah, something like that, but you can have like multiple different lists from like you can create lists, right? Like maybe like what I do in every country that we're in, for instance, I create like a list that's called like Georgia restaurants, right? And I saved every single restaurant that anybody has told me about this place or that I find in a bunch of different places. And then I have them all there, right? And then when we're like choosing what to eat or whatever, I just have a list where I just look and then it has reviews, like it's easy to choose. And then same with just like creating like a Georgia best, like what I actually really, really like out of the place, I save it to that list so then I can share it easily afterwards with people that are coming to the same areas and are asking me what should I do. I just send them a list.
It's also very convenient because
Places to go.
when you randomly end up on one side of the city and
Right.
you're hungry, you can just open it and say, okay,
What's
out
around
of
me.
the things that I saved that you wanted to
Yeah.
do, what's next to me.
And also
And you
places
can,
to see.
yeah, and you can add notes to it, so you can
Right.
you can like type how
Who recommended it to you or like what's special about it.
That sounds great because I've been doing it by email, just running lists, and it is not practical at all. So thanks for the tip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's helpful too because you can share your itineraries with friends too. So
makes it easy. And also next time I come, I have that, right? Like
Mhm.
next time I come, I can take a look at like where I was, what I did, and then the things that I have in my list that I didn't go to. So I think that's
and the best of lists in Google Maps are being shared on the Substack. So if you're gonna visit any places that we have recommendations, you can get Carla's best of list and see it on your map and see where
exactly.
where
Yeah, I
those
can.
are,
When you share it, you can just save that stuff on your own map. So
I'm definitely going to get that whenever I travel to one of the countries you all have vetted. I'd love to see your list.
We're a little bit delayed with some of them, but they're coming. Like
I have them all. So if you just DM me, I'll send them to you.
Ooh, all right. Pro tip. So we had another question about how to guarantee a steady Wi-Fi connection. I know you talked about data. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's
That's
a huge thing. Like, I saw that it's like for
working.
for working. Yeah. So we deal with this a lot when we were working. So a few things, I mean, at least one, and then you can say your opinion, but like on Airbnb, so like actually more and more, I feel like people are actually like sharing screenshots of their internet speed. And even if it's not already there, you can always ask. And you often did this because it was like, we were both in calls all day and like, we really needed the internet. And if we didn't have the internet, we couldn't be there. So like, we would often like write and ask, like, can you please send a screenshot? Can you tell us like if your speed is like, and sometimes actually some people were just like, you shouldn't stay here, like we're kind of upfront about it, which we sort of appreciate. And then others would just send it. So, I mean, I think that's one thing we did.
Yeah, and I had like a set of instructions in case the host didn't know how to like go to speedtest.com and click on this and take a screenshot and send it back to us, and they will just follow that. Also, one thing, Airbnb lets you search through reviews.
Oh yeah, always search for internet.
The text, so always search for internet or Wi-Fi and see if anybody's complaining about
if
the
it's
speed.
like slow internet, then don't book it.
Yeah. Or if somebody's actually praising the speed, so that's also a good.
And if you do have Google Fi, for instance, or if you buy a local SIM card, like, I mean, we had to do that a lot actually, where like the internet just like fell down or whatever, and then we would just like connect to our LTE right on the phone. Computer to the phone, and then just take the calls from there. So that's the backup,
But it is limiting, and that's why
it is definitely
that's
limiting.
why we wanted to travel without working, because now we
don't have to worry about where we are and what the internet is.
If we're gonna spend 2 weeks somewhere where there's no internet connection, it's okay for us.
But it's something that you always have to think about if you have to work. That's absolutely true.
I'm glad you found internet to do this awesome presentation.
Yeah, me too. We sort of assume we're gonna be in Tbilisi, so there must be internet, so.
We had another question about, I don't know about your retirement savings, if you want to share any of that, but someone asked, how has the trip affected any retirement savings goals?
Yeah,
I mean, for sure.
So I was talking about how we have this like phased plan where we want to like have retired at some point and then do some other things. So it obviously pushed out some of the dates. So maybe for the next phase of have retirement where we can half of the income versus that. Maybe this year we'll push it maybe 5 years or 3 years later, but we don't, I don't know, we don't like to think about it that way. We wanna, this is like, we're only gonna be 35 and 36 once, right? So we don't, yes, we could have maybe done this trip in 5 years or in 6 years and get to that half retirement part of our retirement plan faster, but we would rather be doing this now and push that a little bit further. And that's where
It's worth it for us.
like working with the planner is very interesting because she has like this software that lets her do like all these projections and what happens if we do it now? What happens if we do it in 2 years? And you get to see like all like when like is it worth the trade-off or not?
Yeah.
I need that planner. That does sound very helpful.
Yeah, financial.
We got a couple of questions about staying with locals, if you couch surf, if you hitchhike.
No, yeah, we don't hitchhike.
We've taken hitchhikers.
We have taken hitchhikers, yes, definitely.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been fine.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting like conversations. I mean, we of course stay with locals in different ways, right? So like right now we did like a multi-day hike in Upper Spaneti here in Georgia. Like you stay in guest house, and so it's basically like the house of somebody. So like there are kind of like these places where like that's kind of where you're staying, you know, and like you're having like meals with them kind of like every night and every morning, and like I mean, we have conversations with locals all the time. Like we, you know, you have to stay with them to have that. But yes, I mean, I think that's kind of how we do it. I mean, we like our space, right? And that's just how we like to travel. So everybody can travel their own way.
I agree. I think it's important to know what you like and how to design your trip for that. So
yeah. And I don't think it's limited in any way. Like, I mean, for me, the most important thing about traveling, or like the most enriching sort of thing about traveling, is to meet people. And we are constantly doing that in many different ways.
I know you had mentioned a packing list that you had, but Debbie asked, how much luggage are you carrying for this trip?
Yeah, so the packing was like a big thing, particularly for me. Yeah, well, because he wears like 2 hiking pants and like 2 shirts, and that's all he does, and so he's happy that way. So you know, if you're like that, then that's amazing. But we debated kind of how, like, what to take. We have carry-ons, so we debated between like a backpack, a carry-on, and whatever, like what sort of like method we would back, but we decided on carry-ons because I had my backpacking time and was enough for me. I didn't want to have to be carrying a huge backpack on my back. So, but they're small, right? And so they're
like 15 kilos each.
Like 12 to 14 or so kilos in the bag, and then just backpacks, little backpack with like the laptop and whatever. So yeah, I mean, what's in it? That's like a whole thing, right? So it just depends on kind of like how you like, but like you have to think about all these scenarios, right? Of like, we're definitely following the sun, so we're never in any place that's like extremely cold. I think if you are going to like extreme cold, extreme hot, then that would make it much hotter. Like we're carrying, like in terms of jackets, it's just like a down jacket, like that's basically it. So it's like compact, easy to carry, etc. So, but then a couple pants, like some jumpsuits, like a few shirts, like kind of determined. I have a whole reel about what I carried, so you can find it on IG. But yeah, it was a whole thing.
I'll have to watch that. I'm about to head to India. I'm a maximalist packer, even though I want to be a minimalist. So I just have to tell myself, you can get most of everything that you need in that country.
Totally. And truthfully, like I mean, now that we've been traveling for a few months, like I know I could have done it with like 5 kilos less for sure. Like you really do learn that like you don't need that much. Like I would have still taken the carry-on, but like not like just like lighter,
Yeah, exactly. How do you protect yourself when doing things like banking online while you travel?
Well,
do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, so
two-factor authentication.
Yeah, we have two-factor authentication on each of our accounts, and
that you should do for sure.
So we get SMS on our American numbers every time we want to log in. We also use like different like strong passwords for every account. We're using like the Google password manager, and they'll
Mhm.
generate passwords for everything you do. Before Google Fi cut us out of data, on Android, they will let you use like a VPN in most countries. So that will also be like an extra layer of protection, but we lost that recently. But yeah, mostly.
I think two-factor authentication.
Yeah, two-factor authentication, different passwords, don't clicking on spam emails.
Yes.
Mhm. That's a big one.
There's a lot of that going around for sure.
Another question, let's see. Max asked, I know you are a child-free Latinx couple. Do you ever get kind of pushback from people who don't seem to understand that lifestyle, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that. Being child-free is not understood for sure to date. So yeah, and honestly, especially while traveling, I found, I mean, also in the States, no doubt, but there's just countries that like that's even less kind of like common, you know, and even less discussed and even less understood. And so there's a lot of like, do you guys have kids? Like, no. And they're like, not yet, right? And like when you're just like, no, not ever, they're just like really shocked, you know. But I don't know, how do you deal with it? I mean, my personal way, like I mean, I really do like to talk about it. Like I am not like, I don't shy away. Like I would never kind of answer the question of not yet, like just being like, yeah, maybe not yet. Like it's always like, no, like we don't want to have children, right? Because I feel like it's kind of up to us, right? The people that are choosing this life to really make it a little bit more acceptable and to kind of pave the path for others that might be thinking about also not having children, but not feeling that they can because society has told them that they shouldn't, you know, that it's just not an okay choice. So yeah, I talk about it all the time.
And the Substack on the opinion section, Carla wrote a piece on that.
Yeah, basically giving advice to people.
Great.
So there is a like a child-free and shameless post if you guys want to take a look at it, because we are
awesome. I definitely appreciate your feedback on that because I understand that a bit. Let's see. Do you know if we can use T-Mobile's data for up to 6 months when traveling overseas? It's very specific. I don't know if you ever used T-Mobile.
No, we asked. We haven't used it, but when we asked
yeah.
other travelers, they told us most like T-Mobile and some other companies have the same policies that if they haven't detected you inside of the US for a few months, they'll cut you your international data until you get back.
Okay. We don't want that to happen. So I'd love to hear about your favorite things to pack for long-term travel. So let's just say, do you have like 1 or 2 items that you think you couldn't travel without long-term?
I can go first. My hiking pants that Carla referred to. So I have them in like 4 colors. They're Colombia, and they turn into shorts. And Carla doesn't like it when I wear them when we go on date dinners.
I mean, because they're obviously hiking pants. It's like, no, they don't look like hiking pants. I'm like, yes, they do. They have like little pockets, like they're like hiking pants. But anyway, for me, I mean, it's really funny because like I'm obsessed with jumpsuits. And like people, when I was packing, they're just like, they're terrible for traveling because you literally have to like, anyways, it's like they're not super, but I love them, and it's kind of like the pieces that I most wear. So at the end of the day, like that turned out to be the case, which is interesting. My Tevas, so I have like Teva sandals, and I kind of live without them. Like they have been like lifesavers throughout the trip. It's probably the thing that I've worn the most, those sandals. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. Honestly, everything else I could probably live without. I'm trying to think. So yeah, not much.
We have Tevas. Somebody asked about hiking trips. Not sure if you use those for hiking, but do you use guides for multi-day hiking trips, or do you find like a preset itinerary, or just do your own research?
Yeah,
so
we've been using the app called All Trails.
No, but how we found the multi-day trail was not All Trails. So
we read about them either online or in Lonely Planet, but the route to follow the routes, usually the All Trails app is a really good tool to make sure that you don't get lost in the trail.
But yeah, no, if I with a bit of research, it's kind of obvious whether you can do it yourself or you shouldn't because it's dangerous. And if we are able to do it by ourselves, like the one that we just did in Georgia is like a super popular one. Like it's like pretty obvious from the moment you start reading about like hiking in Georgia. There's this like multi-day hiking route here that like it's like, you know, a lot of people do, and it's great. And so like, you know, right, that like if that's the case, then you can easily do it on your own. And so why would, like, you could get a guide, but like, why would you? And then you kind of start looking into, okay, where are the places that people stop? Like where do people stay? And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of the trip, and this is another piece of like full-time travel, right? That a lot of the trip, you're really kind of, you're spending it like researching and planning your next phase, right? Like that's a lot of like, well, we're not out kind of exploring, right? It's like, okay, a month, we're going to be in Georgia. What do we want to do? We want to definitely hike in Georgia. Okay, what route should we do? Where should we stay? What things do we need to, like, we bought, like, for instance, like shoes, like hiking shoes in Turkey, because we were doing this here. And then now we're going to go hike in Peru. So we're also taking them there. So like, you know, we just really love hiking. So we'll make it work. And then also we're not carrying kind of camping gear and all of that stuff. And so that was a big kind of thing, right? If you want to do multi-day hiking, like we need to do it in a way that like you can stay in little villages along the way. Like there's routes like that.
So you don't need to bring everything.
So you don't need a tent, right? And you don't need a sleeping bag. You don't need like, I mean, if you're carrying all of that, then you have a lot more like options. But if you don't, you have options too. And they're like amazing, like incredible hiking. But then you're staying in like a warm bed and eating warm food and talking to locals while you're drinking wine. Yeah. So it's an amazing hike, and also very great to do it during this time of year because it's off season. So there was like no one.
But in Peru, for example, we're doing it with like a company. So they're like they bring the tents, they bring the sleeping bags, they bring all. So it would be different. Yeah.
So yeah, it all depends on where we're going, how much time we have to plan it, and all of that.
I think you just posted a reel on your multi-day hike. Is that right? It was great. So everyone can go connect with them on Instagram. Yeah. We have time. So we have 2 more questions, and I think that'll be all we have time for. Andrew was wondering, are your overnight stays the most expensive portion of your travel?
Overnight stays the most expensive.
Means accommodation.
Yeah.
Like accommodations, whether accommodations.
Yeah, I think in some places they are. In Greece and Western Europe, it was mostly accommodation was the most expensive thing of the day. Once we started getting more east, like even Turkey at the beginning, accommodation was higher. But as we started traveling east, then accommodations prices started dropping. And here in Georgia, it's also been pretty affordable.
Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, I think honestly in Georgia, the most expensive things are like tours, which we actually haven't been doing because of that. Like they're surprisingly expensive in comparison to like accommodation and food. So again, it depends on the destination, but yeah, I mean, when we are in places where like overnight stays are more expensive, then we eat out less, right? And things like that. And again, your question about like how do you manage that? Like in Greece, for instance, like I mean, Greece is not cheap in comparison to other places, and so you know we were spending a little bit more on accommodation there, but we would only like eat out like once, and so like it just depends, right? We would cook more, or like we would always have breakfast at home, or things like that, or like we would like eat a gyro that's like €1 and like that's for the day, right? And so you kind of balance it out.
Yeah. Someone had asked something related to accommodations. Have you had to change accommodations once you landed in a place and there was maybe like a major issues with that accommodation? How do you manage higher cost of booking last minute if you do have to change?
Yeah, so we haven't done it in this trip yet, so we haven't had an issue like that, but we've definitely done it in the past. But it's been, I mean, the one that I remember now, it was like through Airbnb, and like because there were issues, like you actually don't lose the money, right? Like if there's something that's happening, like you're like in that case, like we thought we were going to get something that we didn't get, like there was something like misleading in the booking, and so we basically book another one and then fought it out with had a conversation with
that time because it was last minute, we had to pay a lot more, and I think that's the question.
Yeah,
it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I think it would suck, but
yeah.
Sometimes you can connect with the host right outside of the platform. Sometimes you could find ways to do that to hopefully cut some costs.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a good question. It's gonna happen at some point, but yeah, I think you have to be willing also sometimes to like it's about like your comfort, your safety, right? And like versus
Sure.
like money, and like that's
I think also
sometimes.
when you're not in such touristy place or not in high season, that's not that big problem, right? Like right now, Tbilisi doesn't have a lot of tourism, so if something didn't work out that we need to get something else tonight somewhere else, I don't think it'll be that hard. Like prices would not be like crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Our final question, I just want to ask this because I'm curious about this too. Since you're traveling so much, do you plan on creating content for a YouTube channel? I know you have your website.
Yeah, so no, we do not have a YouTube channel,
Okay.
but we are creating a lot of content, right? So I create a lot of content for Instagram. So a lot of content around what we're doing, how we're doing it. So like if you see like any of my reels, it will have like a full kind of list of recommendation underneath about like what we do. So I do that for every destination we go or every like major thing we do, or a like very important thing that I want to like share. So there's a lot of content there. And then there's also the Substack.
Oh yeah, and also Carla, because most of her content goes through stories. She's
Oh, yeah.
pinning the stories there. Like if you go to the
Yes,
Instagram, you
the
can
highlighted.
see all this that like grouped of stories for each of the cities we've been.
Right, like if you're interested in going to like Athens, like there's a highlight of Athens and everything we did in Athens and everywhere we ate and everything
You
we
can
did.
just
And
click
then
on it and see the stories for Athens.
and then there's also the like reel that has like all the recommendations in text. And then we also have a website, which kind of is the Substack, which is basically like just writing. So I'm kind of like divided into like 3 buckets. So I write either about opinions. So like this child-free piece that I mentioned is obviously an opinion. There's a bunch of other opinions that we have there and like what we think about life. And then there's the recommendations, which is more of like what to do, what to eat, blah, blah, blah. And then there's like travel stories, which is basically just like, just creative writing about like the things that are happening to us, like what we are liking.
I highly recommend everyone check out their website. It's great. It's linked here. And if you do ever start a YouTube channel, please let us know. We have a couple of housekeeping items. Do you have anything else you want to add, Carla or Ellen?
I mean, just thank you so much for everyone for being here and for all your very insightful and thoughtful questions. We are really kind of here for any extra questions. Just send them over in Instagram. It's the easiest way. And sign up for the link that we sent out, and we'll send you this deck if it's useful with the tips. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks so much, Mia.
Thanks, everyone. Of course. Great to host you. I have a couple of other events to announce. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly one more time. Let's see. Oh, hold on 1 second. I ended up getting rid of that screen. So we have, aside from virtual events, we also do a book club, which is coming up pretty soon. And that will be on the 25th. Along with our other virtual events. All right, let me get this up for you. And they're free to attend, which is amazing. Our next one is going to be, drum roll please, as we're loading, October 27th. So definitely check out our website, fill out a profile if you haven't already. You can also look at our website for meetups near you. And again, if you want to start a meetup group, you can apply to be a chapter leader or to have a virtual event, just email us. This will be our next book club event. I highly recommend signing up if you are free. And lastly, we have group tours that are ongoing. There may be a place across the world that you really want to travel to. Check out our group tours there. They look like loads of fun. I haven't been able to go on one, but a lot of friends are hosting and it looks like a blast. So definitely check that out. And lastly, you all are what makes our community so special. So thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you again next time. So everyone enjoy your day, and thanks again for your time. Bye, everyone.